Click the links to the alternative video platforms thanks to support Channel Coffee or through crypto thanks to recent donations. You're anonymous, so just send thanks out to the world. All right, so this could be a very short video about why The Last Man Standing, which is a comic book, went for about 60 issues, then went to a show on Hulu. Men are men. They usually produce sperm, and women bear young. So women have roles, and men have roles. It's pretty simple. Clothing or toys don't make the man or woman. Those are just roles that over thousands of generations, the intelligent monkey known as man started dividing themselves into these gender roles. Form follows function or something like that. Say, for example, napping Flint fell to the man because they hunted, so they knew what they needed. But for whatever reason, they wanted to train the daughters of the tribe into stonework. You could very easily. Stonework doesn't make a woman a man. Women might even be better at it because they have different visual acuity. A woman is still a woman. She's the one who bears the young. But now that I think about it, I kind of understand the concept, the reason of taboo. Keeping people in roles kind of kept society stable to the point where if the tribe had to delete an outlier, it was probably worth it just to maintain harmony. Now there are no taboos left because taboo is kind of a concept that only works in a nation of one people. As soon as you mix cultures, usually if they're of equal strength, both tribes' taboos will fall away, which isn't good because even if the taboo is arbitrary, like legitimately arbitrary, it still provides very much needed structure, which humans turn out really to need. A mixed city is an example of the rat-eating rat environment of no taboos, where people on a subway will literally watch a woman get struggle snuggled and not even call the police. They'll just sit and watch it. I mean, really, at that point, you could just pepper spray the whole thing, and at least that would slow the guy down until the police arrive. Because they feel like there are cameras everywhere. If they do something, if they say something, they might get doxxed, fired, their lives destroyed. So they just sit back and watch it. They don't trust their mixed society to protect them, and they're absolutely right. And the logical progression of this society is sacrificing babies to Moloch. Then you can expect some holy war as those who want to preserve society struggle to wipe out these demon people in the eternal battle of order versus chaos. Yeah, a war would actually be preferable to turning into Brazil or South Africa. No offense. 200 years from now, China, South Korea, Japan will have outposts on the moons of Jupiter. America, Brazil, and South Africa, Mexico will be hellholes. And now that I think about it, Europe will also be firmly in the second and third world category. The globalists will have won the final battle and finally brought their Luciferian light onto the world. If anyone was going to get man off this planet, it would have probably been America. I suppose, and they know it had to be destroyed, and they did it. You can say, you can point to a lot of different dates, but loosely I'll say 1965 as the date that the ship has sailed forever. Now what we're seeing with shows like The Last Man Standing, trans kids, and literal baby sacrifices is the humiliation ritual. It's the part of the equation that is if we can make you believe absurdities, then we can do atrocities. Deleting babies is deleting the future of a people, but replacing an entire tribe of people who reach for the stars with those with more earthly goals is a way to destroy an entire planet, or at least set it back 10 million years. Oh, but if women were in charge, it'd be a paradise. No, it'd just be mud huts. Like in 200 years, you'd just be mud huts. That's basically, that's about what you could hope to achieve. There are tons of science fiction stories that deal with civilizations. I was a kid, I was reading science fiction back when it was, or even the liberals of the day. Like you're reading science fiction pre-80s. The liberals of the day were surprisingly, like you just wouldn't recognize them as a liberal nowadays. So a lot of these stories dealt with this concept of civilizations having many breakout points, sometimes internal, of whether man can avoid atomic war or the demographic war, or external aliens who watch for civilizations about to reach the star-going stages of development so they can try to hinder that progress. And here's where you'd insert the Chappelle punchline: dodging that algorithm like my responsibilities. So Greg Bear and David Brin, science fiction writers of, I don't know, I guess the 80s, had stories on this concept. Pop cultural stuff like The Last Man aren't nothing. They are a piece of the puzzle, and it's actually not a very difficult puzzle to solve. It's like a Rubik's Cube, but with, I don't know, very fewer pieces, if that makes sense topologically speaking. The comic that the show was based on seems to have been inspired by Greg Bear's book. I forget the name of it. I think it was something that had radio. It's Greg Bear's book about men deleting women. You can Google it. Which, for all I know, was inspired by Pulp Fiction from 50 years earlier. The show was canceled. The Twitter kids immediately got on board to start saying that another network would be sure to grab such a diverse, inclusive show. They repeated those words. They didn't talk about if the show was good or not, just that we were always at war with Oceania/diverse. People pointed out, and then they get called Nazi for not recognizing that the show is nothing more than propaganda. Whether the show is good or not is a moot point, because it's not a show, it's propaganda. I want to see JDA write a comic book about a bunch of trans space colonists that go off to colonize a distant planet, but they all die off because they can't reproduce because they're trans. The kids, or kids in adults' bodies, claim that the world is gender fluid, except for Africa and the Middle East, and how difficult it is to make a show like this in the modern world, except that the world is a sexual binary. That's the red-pilled real world, XX, XY. Calling yourself a trans man or woman is almost a meaningless term. It doesn't change anything. Its only goal is to virtue signal and attract attention. To make a show that explores gender could be wrapped up in like one 30-minute episode. Here's a woman and a man who wear clothing designed for the other's anatomy. The storyline sort of laughs at that whole idea. If you have a world of no men, then having a trans man, i.e. woman, survive is like a big so what. Biological women survive because the disease attacked the Y of the XY, or the any Y found in the coding whatsoever. So it's like you can have all these different names, but it's like that's the story's plot lines. It's going after the Y coding. Changing the clothing doesn't change the woman. If anything, it sort of makes a mockery of the whole thing. We're going to explore gender identity. Why? Just why? It seems like there are bigger issues to explore at present, and obviously the audience felt the same because the show's canceled. This feels like obsessive navel gazing, just a circle jerk of San Francisco types blowing smoke. The concept of the show is biology. XY are wiped out because they have the Y, with some rare exceptions. It doesn't matter if I wear a dress, I'm still going to die because biology. And all this stuff seems like peak Weimar, even worse than Weimar, because right now there's nothing opposing this silliness. Critics have called the original comic book transphobic because the XY disease affected XY people. They felt that science was transphobic. At this point, who cares? Accelerate this train to destruction. The critics explain that there are both XX and XY men and XX and XY women, which is confusing because that's not how language works. Words refer to concepts or things. If a word means different things to different people, then for clarity, you would create a new word. But they don't want to be trapped by the structure of language, of a definition, because then people can offer a rebuttal. It's how you start to build a dialogue going back and forth. So they kind of behave like children, really. So the words become self-referential. If a woman is whatever one wishes to define itself as, that's what woman. Then that renders the word useless, or at the very least creates a division for different definitions for different people. If you're on the right, race and sex mean one thing, and if you're on the left, you have just your own definitions, and it's like you just have to you just have this Tower of Babel going on. 1984 wasn't shy about its warning. The joke is the left took 1984 for a guidebook, but it's not a joke because they actually did, and all this stuff is actually happening. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys all next episode.